We're back with all the breaking news on the mass shootings in El Paso, Texas, and Dayton, Ohio. We just heard from the mayor of El Paso. He says he will welcome President Trump's plan to visit El Paso on Wednesday. Let's get the latest on the president's response to the attacks. Our White House correspondent, Caitlin Collins, is joining us. Caitlin, the president blamed the shootings on a lot of things, but not necessarily on the weapons or on his own rhetoric.
Yeah, and he also didn't introduce any major new gun laws that he thinks should be passed, any kind of proposals like that. Wolf, he also didn't mention those background checks that he first tweeted about this morning, something that we're told by sources actually caught several White House aides off guard, and they didn't think it was wise what the president was proposing in that tweet, which was linking those background checks to potential immigration reform. But as the president addressed the nation just hours later here at the White House, Wolf, he did denounce bigotry and white supremacy, and he vowed to do more. He vowed to do something, but now the question is, what is it that the president is going to do?
Our nation must condemn racism, bigotry, and white supremacy.
Tonight, President Trump is condemning white supremacy after 2 mass shootings in less than 24 hours.
These sinister ideologies must be defeated.
But he's offering few details on what he'll do to stop another from happening. In a solemn address from the White House, the president said he's directing the FBI to examine ways to identify and address domestic terrorism. But he stopped short of calling for new gun laws, instead turning his focus to mental health.
Mental illness and hatred pulls the trigger, not the gun.
Trump making no mention of his morning tweet suggesting tying background checks to immigration reform. The president did reference the El Paso shooting suspect's manifesto that warned of an immigrant invasion and advocated views he said predated the president.
The shooter in El Paso posted a manifesto online consumed by racist hate.
Today, Trump ignored how some of its language echoes his own.
I was badly criticized for using the word invasion. It's an invasion. But how do you stop these people? You can't. There's no. That's only in the panhandle you can get away with that statement.
Democrats aren't brushing off the similarities.
He's been calling Mexican immigrants rapists and criminals. I don't know, like members of the press, what the Hold on a second. You know, it's these questions that you know the answers to. I mean, connect the dots about what he's been doing in this country.
Third,
instead, Trump says other factors are to blame.
We must stop the glorification of violence in our society. We must recognize that the internet has provided a dangerous avenue to radicalize disturbed minds and perform demented acts.
Today, he repeated a talking point from House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy, that video games play a part in increased violence in America.
This includes the gruesome and grisly video games that are now commonplace.
It's an old claim not substantiated by any research, and was even dismissed by Supreme Court Justice Antonin Scalia in 2011. For the most part, Republicans are staying silent, and those who are speaking are struggling to propose new solutions.
Bad people are going to do bad things if they're hell-bent on doing that.
Democrats are calling on Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell to reconvene the Senate for a vote on stalled gun legislation they argue could prevent the next shooting, a step sources say he's unlikely to take. The question now is what happens next. Trump has called for gun restrictions in the past.
I think it's something you have to think about.
But later backed off of them after sitting down with NRA leadership. Now, Wolf, the mayor of El Paso just announced that the president is going to visit on Wednesday. That's a visit that Beto O'Rourke, who of course is from El Paso and used to represent Texas in Congress, has said should not happen because, in his words, quote, the president has helped create what we saw in El Paso on Saturday. Now, Wolf, I was in El Paso back in February, the last time that both President Trump and Beto O'Rourke were there, when they both staged these counter rallies, going after each other, criticizing each other. Beto O'Rourke criticizing the president over wanting to build that border wall. The president going after Beto O'Rourke, saying he didn't think that presidential bid that he's currently pursuing was going to last. But of course, now with what happened on Saturday over the weekend, with all of these people dead, so many injured, it is going to be a very different contrast when both of them are there in Texas on Wednesday.
Caitlin Collins over at the White House. Thanks for that report. Joining us now, a leading Democratic presidential candidate, Senator Kamala Harris. Senator, thanks so much for joining us.
Sure, Wolf. Good to be with you.
So you say President Trump, in your words, has emboldened white nationalism. So what went through your mind, Senator, when you heard him say today that the nation must condemn white supremacy?
Wolf, he does not speak as a leader. He rarely does. And on this occasion, America needs a leader to actually speak truth and do it in a way that acknowledges fact. And we just can't get that from Donald Trump. It is his words, yes, and I said that. His words and his conduct have coddled this kind of behavior, and in terms of the white nationalism. And the reality is that his words also today were empty and frankly meaningless on the issue of gun violence. What we have seen in El Paso, a mother was a human body shield to save to save the life of her infant child. We've seen police officers run into danger to save innocent lives. We have seen the worst kind of tragedies we can imagine. And this president will not call it what it is, gun violence that is out of control, and that we as a nation are in need of reasonable gun safety laws. I feel very strongly that America needs real leadership, and this president is not able to provide it.
Well, you think there's going to be a chance that some significant gun legislation could even come up for a vote in the Senate? It passes the House, where there's a Democratic majority, but the Senate Majority Leader, Mitch McConnell, doesn't even let this kind of legislation come up for a vote.
It's highly irresponsible, but this is not the first time. I'm a part of leadership on a bipartisan bill to improve America's elections infrastructure, because we all know that the Russians interfered in the election of the President of the United States. Bipartisan support. I serve on the Senate Intelligence Committee. There are members of the Senate Intelligence Committee, Republicans, who support this, and he will not put that on the floor for a vote. So I call on him to step up, and I frankly believe very strongly that the members of the United States Congress must lead and stop cowering to these special interests, and must lead in terms of fighting for the well-being of the American people and the safety and well-being of the American people. It is time to act. We're not going to wait, and we can't wait for another tragedy. People say, oh, well, maybe we're waiting for a good idea. Nope, all the good ideas have been had. Many of my friends and I have proposed great ideas, but you know what? We don't need new ideas. We've got them. We need Congress to act, and in this case, the United States Senate. And Mitch McConnell should put the vote on the floor. And I believe everybody should have to stand and speak on this issue and be held accountable by their constituents. Because, Wolf, here's the other thing about this. Those bullets are not distinguishing between a Republican and a Democrat. And those children who are going to school every day in fear of some gunman roaming the halls of their school could care less if you are a Democrat or a Republican. The American people have a right to expect that on certain issues, we not act in a way that is about partisanship, but we act in a way that is about the best interest of the health and well-being and safety of the American people.
Senator, the Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell just put out a statement. Let me read part of that to you. He said Senate Republicans are prepared to do their part. He says he's asked committees to reflect on the president's policy proposals that were spelled out today. What are the chances that any of this, though, leads to new legislation that potentially could be signed into law?
Look, frankly, Wolf, Washington, D.C., this is actually literally in the hands of one person in terms of the legislative action, and it's Mitch McConnell. And I would hope and pray that he understands that he actually has the power to do the right thing here, and that he will do the right thing. But it doesn't sound like he's prepared to do that.
The former president, President
That's
Obama,
irresponsible.
President Obama, as you know, he rarely, since leaving office, weighs in on these kinds of issues publicly. He put out a very powerful statement today, and let me read once again a little piece of that. He said, we should soundly reject language coming out of the mouths of any of our leaders that feeds a climate of fear and hatred or normalizes racist sentiments. Leaders who demonize those who don't look like us or suggest that other people, including immigrants, threaten our way of life or refer to other people as subhuman or imply that America belongs to just one certain type of people. That's a part of the statement from President Obama. It's clear he's referring to the current president. I assume you agree.
Of course I agree. And again, you just contrast the words, and you don't even need to know who they're coming from to know that one are the words of a leader and the other are the words of someone who does not understand and is not actually a leader. President Obama is absolutely spot on and has a history of being spot on these issues. And, listen, Donald Trump he does not understand, I think, the importance and the responsibility of being president of the United States. When it comes to speaking to our better angels, when it comes to speaking to our better selves, when it comes to elevating discourse and engaging all Americans to think of ourselves as all being in this together. And he, on this issue in particular, was playing golf for most of the day. Are you kidding me? Blood is streaming. Babies are being orphaned, and he's playing golf. So just across the board, when you look at the behavior, the action, and the words of this current president, America deserves better.
It appears, as you know, that the El Paso shooter specifically targeted the Hispanic community, and several Mexican citizens who happened to have been visiting El Paso were killed in the process. You're right now at the Unidos U.S. conference. What are you hearing from the people there?
I'm hearing what I've been hearing, frankly, for the last 2 years, but in a heightened volume today, as we all mourn what has happened in our country. And I'm hearing a combination of things. I'm hearing fear, I'm hearing outrage, and I'm hearing also a recommitment to fight, and to fight for the best of who we are. Wolf, I've been meeting people along the way ever since this president started campaigning about, rapists and murderers and, mass deportations and a wall that, by the way, will never get built, and vilifying immigrants. I've been hearing the stories from the day after the election in November of 2016. From pediatricians, because families were canceling appointments for their children to come in for fear that those families would have contact with an institution that might deport them. I've been hearing from teachers from day one who are noticing that children are not coming to school out of fear, that when they go home after school, their parents might not be there. I'm hearing the fear that comes from family members and parents who are concerned that if they're going shopping for school supplies on a Saturday, weekends before school starts, that they may be slaughtered because of a white supremacist. These are the things I'm hearing. And we need a president of the United States who says, I will work in every way possible so that the people of our country will not live in fear, so that the children of our country will not live in fear. But we don't get this from this president. From this president, what we get is hate mongering. What we get is speech that is clearly intended to sow hate and division among us. And so I applaud President Obama for speaking up at this moment in the way that he did.
Under a hypothetical Kamala Harris presidency, Senator, you say you're prepared to take executive action if Congress can't pass gun control legislation within your first 100 days. You want, obviously, universal background checks. You want an assault weapons ban. Is there any other action you're considering when you look at these, for example, two most recent mass shootings, and unfortunately, tragically, sadly, there have been so many of them in recent years?
Right. So under the Harris administration, I will give the United States Congress 100 days to pull their act together on this and put a bill on my desk for signature. And if they do not, I will take executive action, as you mentioned. And in particular, put in place a comprehensive background check requirement. I'll also make sure that we give the ATF the resources that it needs to take the licenses of gun dealers who violate the law. Wolf, you should know 90% of the guns associated with crime are sold by just 5% of the gun dealers. So we need to take those licenses. And then the third piece is that I'm prepared to take executive action to ban the importation of assault weapons into our country. Why am I prepared to do all of this? Because it is time to take action. Words are not enough. Beautiful speeches are not enough. Great ideas are not enough. Grand gestures are not enough. We need to take action. The people of our country deserve it.
Senator Kamala Harris, thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks, Wolf. Take care.
All right, let's get back to our analysts and assess what we've just heard. Susan Hennessy, what do you think? Is anything really going to happen? Because we hear the outrage after every one of these horrible attacks, and very often nothing happens.